football never ceases to surprise me, boys and girls in sporting land out there, my common Joes and common Sallies in the know, even more so than all the media talking heads. If you wonder what I'm all cracked up about here, it's there's a phrase that's sweeping college football land. Now, I don't normally like to talk about politics on here with my sports, but since it's being chanted at college football games, I must address it as much as it breaks my heart. But it goes a little something like this. If Joe Biden, if Joe Biden, if Joe Biden. Wow. I think that's pretty straight and to the point. I don't think there's any way that the media that favors Joe Biden out there can really spin that one. And these are at games across the land, not just in the South. I think it happened in Wisconsin too, maybe even Michigan. But what I'd really like to talk about today, as far as college football goes, is should Texas withdraw their application to the SEC? And is Kansas trying to throw a wrench into the Big 12 expansion? Now, before I get to all that, though, I'd like to ask you guys to like, share, comment, and subscribe to this channel. Subscriptions are most important to keep me motivated and keep us moving forward and bring in more of those common Joes and common Sallies in the know to put us in the know. Now, getting right to it. Texas, their first game against an SEC school since joining the SEC or putting in an application to join the SEC was, ironically, the Arkansas Razorbacks. Now, people think, oh, Texas A&M and Missouri are the ones that really have the extra ground with Texas. No. You got to go back decades before. The real rift began with Arkansas. Arkansas was the odd man out in the Southwest Conference. They were the only team not in the state of Texas, and things weren't going their way a lot in the meetings for some conspicuous reasons. I have my thoughts about that right now, and that is Arkansas started competing hardcore with Texas. Arkansas started beating Texas on the regular. Arkansas had some issues with some of the things being said in the conference meetings. Texas tried to pretend like, and I've touched on this before, that they cared about what Arkansas thought, but they really didn't. They did stuff to antagonize Arkansas, and Arkansas left, and Texas had it all to themselves, and then we see what happened a few years later with Texas A&M and Missouri. So, the first game they play is against Arkansas, who has the real big, long, standing axe to grind. And boy, did they grind the hell out of that axe in Fayetteville, because the game wasn't even close. I mean, it says 40-21. You're like, well, that's obvious. It was a 19-point game. But it was really, to me, worse than a 19-point blowout. They kicked 4 field goals. Now, if a couple of those turns into touchdowns, I know that's what-ifs really don't matter. But if they had, it could have been a lot worse. It could have been a 63-21 shellacking, and a very big embarrassment for Texas in what is really literally their first SEC contest since joining the SEC, and it did not go very well. So maybe the Texas people are thinking to themselves, maybe we should withdraw this application. It's not too late, probably. We could probably get out of this. Maybe they should. Maybe they should go back to the Big 12, where they can put their thumb on people, just like they did back in the Southwest Conference days when they had nothing but a bunch of little Texas schools like Rice and SMU to put their thumbs on. My advice to them is I would probably withdraw my application at this point and maybe consider going back to the Big 12 or joining the Pac-12, who said we're not expanding because the Big 10's not expanding. Yeah, that's going to come back to bite them in the ass, but that's another topic for another day. Well, hell, maybe Texas could even go independent at this point. That's probably the best option for them, if you ask me, is to go independent, because they didn't burn a bridge with the Big 12, and they ain't look too good in their SEC de facto opener without being in the SEC. So maybe they should withdraw their application. And maybe we should get the team that I'm about to talk about next. Maybe they should get Kansas. Since Kansas does have blue blood basketball to add to the portfolio of the SEC, maybe we should consider Kansas to join the SEC for basketball purposes, since it is the second highest money-making sport in collegiate athletics. But the thing is, it is the second most, but it still pales in comparison to football, and that's where Kansas doesn't get it. The Kentucky fans used to be the same way, but they're starting to get it. They're starting to come around. You've got to have a semblance of some kind of football program, Kansas, to join the SEC, or the Big Ten, for that matter, or the Pac-12. And your program has been not just the worst, as John Kurtz touched upon in his podcast. By the way, that's a great guy. Check him out. He touched upon it that Kansas has not only been the worst team in the Big 12, they've been the worst team in the entire college football landscape. So Kansas, you're a little oblivious. You think because you have basketball that will get you into the Big 10, possibly even the SEC. And it might. It might just get you in. But for now, if I were you, I would stop backbiting the Big 12 and the progress they're trying to make, and you trying to act like that adding these teams is something that's going to hurt your basketball program. What's going to hurt your basketball program is the fact that you might be going on probation, but you may not, because the NCAA is probably fixing to go by the wayside. But if Kansas stays in the Big 12 and they would stop backbiting just for a second, they would realize that, hey, they have brought in some pretty decent basketball programs. Cincinnati is not a very bad basketball program. Houston, both of these teams have either been in the Final Four or the Elite Eight numerous times. Sweet 16. BYU, very good in basketball for the most part. I mean, they have their up and down years, but they're not an atrocious basketball program. So you're not really getting anything bad out of this, Kansas. As a matter of fact, Bob Bowlesby, and I don't say a lot of good things about Bob, but he's actually showed a set and went out, and he's not crying anymore, and he's just going out there and rolling with the punches and trying to do something positive, and now you're backbiting. Now, the West Virginia fans, they're backbiting a little bit too, but not as profusely as Kansas. So, once again, my advice to Kansas is, if I was you, I would stay put in the Big 12. They're bringing in some good basketball programs. And in the future, they may even bring in Memphis. And Memphis is pretty good in basketball as well. So stop backbiting and get on board and try to be a team player. That's what allowed this shit to happen with Texas and Oklahoma. And a little further back with Texas A&M, Missouri, and Nebraska and Colorado. It was all the backbiting. Y'all can finally get a league where you haven't got all these old school traditional powers with all this money dictating to you, and you can do something special now. So stop backbiting and move forward and be a team player. And that's all I got to say about that. You guys and gals, drop it in the comment section on what you think should happen. I'm sort of half kidding about the whole Texas thing, but tell me what you think about maybe Texas possibly doing something like that. And tell me if you think that maybe Kansas has a beef and maybe if they should want to go to the Big Ten, or if they should maybe try to tough it out and just be a team player. Big 12, y'all be team players now. Y'all move on from all the backbiting. And with that, like, share, comment, and subscribe. And KMCA to all the other teams.